Hello everyone, good evening or good day depending where you are around the world. I do believe we have a lot of students from all over, also from the last course, also including Europe, Africa, and I even saw a few entries from the US.
There are some.
Apparently. All right, great. So today Chris is with me. How you going, mate?
Hey man, I'm doing good. How are you doing? It's been a long time.
It has been a while. I've been teaching with Anthony. Anthony is not here. Chris is here today with us, and they'll be changing every now and then, so it's good for you to know them both. Now, this is our second lesson to the fundamentals of the wisdom of Kabbalah, and what we're going to do today is we're going to do a bit of a recap of what we did in the first lesson, and then we're going to go on to the next lesson, our second lesson, which is the perception of reality. But just a few things before we get started. Now, I realize that there have been some questions unanswered from the previous lesson, and the reason for that was we had a few windows where we needed to get questions, and within the first lesson and the excitement and everything with the new education center site, we got a little confused, so you'll have to apologize, you'll have to excuse us for that. We do apologize, but we're back on track. So any question that you do have, please shoot them through. The moderators will also translate from your language to our language to English, and then we'll be able to answer all your questions. If there is any question unanswered, we will answer them in the next lesson. So there were questions also from the previous lesson which we didn't get a chance to answer, but we will answer them today. Secondly, before we move on, another important thing, I don't want to sound like a scratch record, but this book is quite important. It's called Kabbalah for the Student. It's a big green book. You can get it on kabbalahbooks.info. So if you'd like to, grab a copy of that. If not, if you prefer reading online or on your iPad, all the articles in there are also on our website, kabbalah.info. So feel free to get in there as we read, because we're going to be reading from the book. But you can also find them there, and it's a good idea to read them during the course of your study when we're doing the fundamentals course. Right here then. So let's do a bit of a recap from our previous lesson. Well, in our previous lesson, we talked about what the wisdom of Kabbalah is. And the wisdom of Kabbalah, we said, according to the Kabbalists, is a way to understand everything that happens in our reality. And for us to really discover what happens in our reality, we talked about first having to go above our reality so that we can actually observe it from a higher level of understanding. It was kind of like a pyramid that I did draw before. Let's draw that here. Did I draw the pyramid with you guys? Now, in our world, in our reality, we have 4 levels. And that's the still level, which is all the rocks and the planets, the stars, the non-living aspects of our reality, the still level. Then we have the vegetative level, which are all the plants. Then we have the animate level, which are all the animals. And then we have the human level, the speaking level, sometimes we like to call it. This is our world, and in our reality there are 4 levels of reality, which we'll touch in the perception of reality as well. But we said that the purpose of studying Kabbalah is to understand everything that happens to us in our reality here. And the reason we can understand, for example, biology, we can understand the animate level, which is our body. This is how our body functions. We can understand what's going on in our body because it's a science, it's biology. We understand that our body works in certain ways. There are certain laws that our body is governed by. And if we study it, we can understand it. And same for the vegetative level. We can study botany, and we can understand how plants grow, how they exist, how they develop. We can understand all that as well. And then also from our level, we can understand the still level, which is physics, chemistry, that kind of science. Let's say physics, chemistry, and things that are related to the still level. We can understand all those things because we're above those levels. But when it comes to humanity, how we live our lives and how we look at our lives and go through all the crises that we're going through at a personal level, at a societal, global, national level, we see that we can't seem to balance ourselves right. And we're certainly, definitely all the time in every generation trying to figure out a better balanced way of living. But however, we can't seem to figure out how. So Kabbalists say, well, listen, you can't. You can understand everything that's lower than you, but in order to understand yourself, you have to go one step above. And that step above is called a higher level of consciousness. And let's just draw a line there. And this is actually where we need to be in order to observe the human level and to give it a nice little tick in our understanding as to why everything happens, not just to us, but also in the whole of reality. In fact, the Kabbalists are saying this science is so wondrous that if we study it and we learn it, we can actually discover everything about reality, including that one force that created everything and governs everything. Even though we don't feel it in our five senses, we have the ability to discover him by going beyond our five senses. And this is the whole idea about studying Kabbalah, to really understand why everything happens, what the purpose of our life is, and why we need to actually attain it. Because certainly we were not created at such an, on the one hand, at such an intelligent level, and then on the other hand, such a desperate level, because we're always in despair with our lives. We're left in these dilemma situations so that we can discover the meaning and the purpose of life. And the purpose of life we're going to get to in our third lesson after the perception of reality, so stick around for that one. Accordingly, what we have to grasp and attain is a level beyond our level of existence in this world. This is this world. And we have to come to a place called the roots, which are the causes. And we have to understand what's happening in this realm. We have to understand all the causes of everything in order to reconcile everything that's happening in this world. And without actually attaining that higher level of consciousness, without attaining the reason for what's happening, we are unable to bring a reconciliation to our lives. At a personal level, definitely not at a societal or a global level. So the wisdom of Kabbalah is a way for us to understand the purpose underlying behind the whole of reality, and how, by doing a practical study, we can attain it. The second most important thing that we did learn was, what was that? Well, that was a simple law in nature. You guys remember what that was? Let me remind you. This is very important. Even if you take just this information from this course, it'll already give you a head start for anything, because it'll make you decide with a lot of thinking behind it. Why? Because we're a desire to receive in our nature. We want to be happy, don't we? Our nature equals desire to receive pleasure. And this is okay. Desire to receive pleasure. That's okay. We can have fun. We can be happy in this world. We're supposed to be happy in this world. However, the moment I get fulfillment in my desire, the problem is the fulfillment and the desire, they cancel each other out. And then I have to feel again fulfillment by chasing some other desire. That's crazy, because we spend our lives chasing one desire after another, only to end up empty again. And then we just get old. And all of a sudden we open up our eyes and we think, oh my God, I'm 30. Oh my God, I'm 40, 50, 60. I'm retired. Ooh, I might just hit the other side. And this is what happens in life. We start chasing all kinds of desires in anticipation of feeling fulfilled and happy. However, the moment we get what we want, the desire and the pleasure eventually cancel each other out. With bigger desires, it takes a bit of a longer time for the desire and the fulfillment to cancel each other out. But with small desires, like, I don't know, if you like chocolate like me, if you have a chocolate, after your second bite, you're already kind of okay with the sugar already. So this law is already very important, because from there we can really, if we know this law, we can start to think about what kind of pleasures we should go after. That's already a big thing. And also in humanity we discovered, which we're going to touch deeper later on, that our desires over time have developed from develops over time. Let's call this time, shall we? Time. And also this, let's call ego. Ego. Also over time, humanity, from the beginning of time, let's call that 0, till our days, we have been developing through society in a constantly increasing desire to receive. So when in the previous generations, our desires were very small, they were at the still level, and then our desires, as humanity progressed, went into the vegetative level, and then we progressed even more, we got into the animate level, animate level, and then we developed to the human level up until the beginning of the 21st century. Now, still level of desires are very basic desires for our survival. So we have food, family, sex. These are very essential because it allows us to live and to carry on the generations. And then humanity, let's call this the development of humanity over time. Humanity. And then humanity, as civilizations developed from Babylon, grew in the vegetative level as well. Now, vegetative level is represented in human society as the desire to be rich. The desire for money is known in society, in Kabbalah, in the wisdom of Kabbalah, as the vegetative level. People who want to get rich. And then we had the animate level. The animate level is power and honor. So people who are hungry for power, like politicians, or for honor, like artists, people who want to be famous, they're all in the animate level. Why? Because animals like this boundary. They have this space that they like to control. And so that's where governance comes from. So people who aspire for power, government, they want to have a place they control. And that's called animate level, and it's in the nature of animals. That's why they're given these names. Same with the vegetative level. For example, sometimes you can see a field of, I don't know, wheat, and there'll be some wheat that'll be higher than the rest of the other wheat. Okay, they've grown a bit longer with the aspiration for the light. Same as well in society, we have such people that they want to be higher in society, above the others, and that's called the vegetative level, where they want to really make money and get rich. And then we have the human level, which is the desire for knowledge. So pure science is called knowledge. And that is actually the pinnacle of human development. That's it. Once we start to know the laws of nature, and we understand the laws of nature, and then we get stuck and can't go beyond that, which is our level at this moment, that's where it stops. And a new desire begins to develop inside of us, and that's called the dot in the heart. Let's make that nice and green here. And the dot in the heart is our aspiration to develop spiritually. Basically, it's asking the question, what am I living for? Why are we living? What's behind the purpose of everything? And that is actually a spiritual aspiration. And a lot of people who have a dot in the heart, they tend to search a lot. From one spiritual method to another, they look for answers for the meaning of life. And if they're really searching, in one of their searches, they'll come to the wisdom of Kabbalah. And that's, I do believe, where we left off. And if you have a dot in the heart, seeking really the purpose of life, then this is where we're at.
If we can go back to the previous picture.
Oh, certainly can do.
This one. So Claire from the UK, she said that she asked this actually last time. Oh, thank you. Right, sorry, the microphone. First time back, these are the kind of things that happen. Okay. Claire from the UK, hey Claire, I hope you're with us this time. If you're not, then maybe you'll catch the recorded lesson. But last time you asked a question, and it's pointing to what you just went over right now. During this diagram that you drew, Claire says, if desire disappears with the fulfillment, and we enter a negative cycle, couldn't we just make sure that we only ever half fulfill our desires?
That's a good question, but we're really not half fulfilled in life, are we? It's like a half job done. Imagine you went to, to the supermarket and you wanted to get, let's say, peanut butter. And then you came home, you opened the peanut butter, and somebody in the supermarket had taken a thumb's full, and you could see that. Somebody stuck their thumb in, took a bunch out, and they probably ate it and then put the can back. You just like, come on, okay? You wouldn't really feel fulfilled with that peanut butter, would you? By nature, we're not really into half-done things. We'd like our desire to receive wants things all the way. The problem is it won't get it done all the way at all. It'll always leave us in this deficit, which keeps us running around. It's also called in the wisdom of Kabbalah as suffering, because we're never really content or really fulfilled. And even if we do get really fulfilled, it only lasts a short time. There was a nice experiment in the US about people who had really expensive sports cars. And they said that after 3 months, the taste from the car went, but what they began to taste was the fact that they have such a car and other people don't. So the fulfillment really isn't there. It just gets diluted and evaporates. Getting half fulfilled is really not in our nature to do so. So even if you could try it, you won't get fulfilled in the long run. People want a good 100% satisfaction, and that's what our nature really demands from us.
So she kind of follows up and she says, if I pursue in Kabbalah, if I pursue pleasures, will I end up with a minus all the time and fill up my knowledge? If I try to fill up my knowledge, will I end up with a minus?
Certainly. Even with knowledge, it's minus, because the thing with knowledge is, although it gives you great fulfillment, what happens with knowledge is when we die, it ends up dead. Okay, so let's say I wanted to learn, let's say I'm a quantum physicist, right? I like quantum physics myself. And let's say I was reading a lot on it. I really wanted to know, learn, and discover it. What happens is, because I'm living still in an animate body, which is destined to die, that information and knowledge also dies. What remains, we'll see in the further lessons as well, what remains from the life that we go through in this cycle of events that we go through while we're in this body is going to be something called impressions, reshimots, or memories that stick around in reality, which allow us to kind of take one step forward in our development. But in terms of knowledge and everything, it's like a little baby. They grow up and we have to send them back to school all over again. So everything will lead to that lack of fulfillment, especially also if you discover, let's say you had a theory and you discovered it, and then after a while, that's it, it's over. You discovered it, it's done. Maybe if you even got a Nobel Prize for it. After a few weeks, okay, I got a Nobel Prize, what can you do? It'll always evaporate. In nature, it's a fixed law. We should start becoming aware of it. If you're studying with us, test yourself during the day. Okay, what do you want, and what happens when you get what you want? It's a very important way of kind of practically seeing what our nature is like.
So let's just finish off with Claire. We're on the same topic. She's saying, so why does pleasure diminish with the desire? What's happening there?
Because there's a purpose to creation. Well, I love the question. which we're going to learn on the third lesson. So stick around. There's a purpose to creation, and it definitely is not, unfortunately, for some people, it's definitely not to get fulfilled here. I know we'd love to be, but development needs to be towards a purpose. And that purpose we need to attain in life. And we'll touch base on that on the third lesson.
We might as well take what Elmer from Malawi is saying. Hi, Elmer from Malawi. It's good to see. Good to see you. We have, how about multiple desires? Is that something that's normal?
Absolutely. We'd like to swallow up the whole world if we could. So we have a lot of desires, but one little tip for you. You can only get what you really, really go after in this life. Anyone with a lot of desires usually ends up with not having any of them fulfilled, or having them fulfilled at very small levels that are not satisfactory. So if you look at very successful people, successful in the level of this world, you'll see that they only went after one thing. They had a big desire for something. For example, athletes, right? They wanted to get the gold medal at the Olympics, and that was the only thing they were thinking about. So you don't see them going around chasing other things. They want one thing and they just go for it. Same with many business people, same with many successful career people. They understand that that's what they're going after, and their eyes just don't see anything else. So if you really, really want to get something you want, make sure you make a good calculation.
I want to appreciate Elmer already for sending in the first question. I just want to say thank you for that. And again, we will emphasize, please send as many questions as you can. If you think they're stupid, I guarantee you they're not. We've heard them all before, and every question helps you, not only you, but all the other students who are with us right now, advance, get a little bit more understanding, make things clear. Maybe it was a question that they had, they didn't really know they had it. Whatever you have, send it in and we'll take care of it, and we'll try to go through as many questions as we can together. Today we have no technical difficulties with the questions, so we're getting from all over the world, so please.
Okay, great. So let's carry on with the second lesson. Today's lesson is called, what is it called? The Perception of Reality.
Oh, it's a favorite.
That's right. There we go, the perception of reality. So let's carry on from there. So a person who comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah comes with a lot of desires, and our desires are denoted with a heart. A man's heart, or a person's heart, is all the desires that he or she has. And then we have a little dot in the heart as well, which is an aspiration to discover the meaning of life. So this is our situation, and we've come to study Kabbalah because we're seeking the meaning of life. Well, perception of reality. Well, you're going to think, well, maybe isn't that a little scientific, and how are we going to get ourselves into another reality? To be honest with you, the perception of reality is the main topic about the wisdom of Kabbalah, and how to get it is going to be all the things we're going to be learning in between, because changing our perception of reality is a big job. We are born in our five senses, and through these five senses, to discover something which we don't have, or to attain something which we don't have, to build, in fact, something we don't have, is a different ball game. So studying is one thing, and making it happen is something else. But we're going to learn everything. Perception of reality. Let's first read something so we can get our heads around it with a text from Baal HaSulam, which is Yehuda Ashlag. Now we're going to read from this book, page 489, and the article is called Introduction to the Preface of the Wisdom of Kabbalah, page 489. Now for those translators out there, I'm going to read it slowly, so don't panic. 489. There we go. 489, item, okay, all the worlds. Let's see where we're at. Introduction to the Preface of the Wisdom of Kabbalah, page 489, and we're beginning to read from, let me just check. Okay. Here we go, all the worlds. Thus it explains, this is the second paragraph in item 1. All right. Thus, it's highlighted in the book. Thus, it explains that all the worlds, upper and lower, are included in man. And also the whole of reality within those worlds is only for man. And we should understand these words. Is this world and everything in it which serves him and benefits him too little for man? And he needs the upper worlds and everything within them too. After all, they were created solely for his needs. Let's read that again. Now remember, Bala Islam wrote these many years ago. We're going to have to interpret it into our language in the 21st century, but thankfully it's not so hard to do. Let's read it again. Thus it explains that all the worlds, upper and lower, are included in man. And also the whole of reality within those worlds is only for man. And we should understand these words. Is this world and everything in it which serves him and benefits him too little for man, that he needs the upper worlds and everything within them too? After all, they were created solely for his needs. Everything we perceive in reality, everything, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what we see, what we hear. Everything that was created in reality was for one purpose and one purpose only. In order for us to raise ourselves to this higher level of perception, to this higher level of consciousness. Now, throughout history, humanity has been wondering about the perception of reality too. In fact, it started firstly and got famous with a guy called Newton, which I'm sure you know. Now, Newton brought about the classical physics in the 1600s. Very nice guy, very smart, and let's make a topic here as well. And when he looked at the perception of reality, let's say perception of reality throughout time, because we're going to see how humanity's been looking at it. Now Newton, and let me just make this a little smaller. Okay. Now Newton, in those days, looked at reality very straightforward. He said, well, I exist and this reality exists, and if I die, this reality still exists. All right, so it's very straightforward. So he thought, well, not he thought, we still think that way actually when we're looking at our lives. Let me make this a little bit more tidy. Let's make this Newton here, Newton. All right, so reality he said reality is constant. All right, that's Newton talking. And then me is also constant. He saw reality in such a way that this is how the world is, and this is how I am. This is how it is. And this is how he perceived it. And when we look at the world today, this way of perceiving reality is also still inside of us. It's really interesting, because although humanity throughout centuries have discovered new ways of perceiving, actually how we perceive the world differently according to what Newton said, we still are so stuck in this model. It's really interesting to see. So there's a reality and there is me, and that reality is constant. It's out there. Life is the way it is, and I am the way I am. And that was Newton's pragmatic way of looking at it, and that was in the 16th century. And then we had Einstein coming along. Einstein. And Einstein said, well, reality is constant. but me, I change. Now that was already a big, step for humanity. Okay, because if you think about it, how can that be? Reality is constant, but if I change, the way I see things change. Although he's imposing on us that reality doesn't change, it's fixed. The way I change according to reality, the way I am changes according to reality. So that was also a new thing for us in the 20th century. And then came along, I think it was Everton, wasn't it? Quantum physics. Yeah. Quantum physics. And then quantum physics said, well, reality is changing, and so am I. We're all changing. And then we have Kabbalah that says, well, there is no reality, and only I'm changing. Now, Kabbalah is obviously not a part of the worldly sciences that humanity is talking about. But if you studied a little bit, or if you read a little bit, or we'll study later on down the line anyway, that the writers of the Zohar were writing about perception of reality more than 2,000 years ago, and how everything was inside man, and that on the outside there was actually nothing to talk about. Well, nothing. It was all about how the person was seeing, feeling, hearing, smelling, tasting according to his attributes. So the world has changed in the way that they look at perceiving reality. But Kabbalists from thousands of years ago knew that the whole of reality was only inside man. And with the text we just read a minute ago, this is what they're talking about. Baal Stam says, well, everything in reality is inside of man, because it's actually felt inside of us, which is not far-fetched. If you think about it, everything that we absorb from the outside through our five senses is a sensation within us. In fact, let's draw that, now that we've mentioned it. So this is humanity's perception of reality, an outlook, let's say. An outlook to the perception of reality over time. That's what humanity has been over. Now we, on the other hand, are going to go with what? With the Kabbalistic texts. So let's read some more from the Zohar. Having spoken about the Zohar, what a perfect time to read something from the Zohar. On page 424. And the article is, let's see, and the article is Preface to the Book of Zohar. Page 424 and item number 34. Let it not surprise you that you find such a conduct in our corporeal perception too. Take our five senses of sight, for example. We see a wide world before us, wondrously filled. But in fact, we see all that only in our own interior. In other words, there's a sort of photographic machine in our hindbrain which portrays everything that appears to us and nothing outside of us. Now, Baal HaSulam, who wrote this article, an introduction, preface to the Book of Zohar, wrote this like, I don't know, 1930s, 40s maybe. So imagine him describing to humanity how we actually perceive reality in those ages with this article. For that he has made for us in our brain a kind of polished mirror that inverts everything seen there, so we will see it outside our brain in front of our face. Yes, what we see outside us is not a real thing. Nonetheless, we should be grateful to his providence for having created that polished mirror in our brains, enabling us to see and perceive everything outside of us. This is because by that he has given us the power to perceive everything with clear knowledge and attainment, and measure everything from within and from without. Without it, we would lose most of our perception. The same holds true with godly will concerning godly perceptions. All right, we'll stop there. We'll stop at the sentence, without it, we would lose most of our perception. So let's take a look at what he wants to tell us here. There we go. You are all familiar with our five senses. We're all created with it. Let's do this. And one more. Okay, there we go. So we have five senses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We see, we hear, we smell, we touch, we taste. Kabbalists are saying that's all great, and we see everything on the outside. From the outside, we have all kinds of influences that with these five senses, we see the world. And we think and believe, according to what we see, that the world is on the outside. However, Kabbalists are saying that's not true. That's not true at all. They're saying we see everything right at the back of our heads here, as if we're in a movie theater watching a movie and the world is going by. Don't you feel that sometimes? You sit back and the world is like going by and you're watching it like a movie. Well, this is exactly how it's happening. So, through our five senses, what happens is we see an image called this world, where we see mountains, we see the sun, the moon. Oh, that wasn't a very good drawing, was it? We see the moon. We see all kinds of stars in the sky. We see animals, trees and plants. Oh, you'll have to excuse my drawing, but you get the drift, right? And we see people all around. Really bad at drawing, so you'll have to excuse me. But this is our world. We see houses, buildings. Doesn't matter what we see. Everything, our cities. All the life that we seemingly built on the outside. And Kabbalists say, well, that's all wrong. It's like a dream. Because everything we live is at the back of our brains. So why do we perceive reality in such a way that it's seemingly outside of me? Kabbalists say the reality is actually felt inside of us, but it appears to us as if it's on the outside so that we can actually build a relationship to it in order to attain something higher than what we perceive. So nature, or the creator, has played a little trick on us, which is for our benefit, so that we can relate everything that we feel, sense, and then we can, by relating it as if it's on the outside, we can actually pinpoint things which we think we need to change, which we believe we should change, or we should discover as to why. So the whole of reality for us, although seems like on the outside, it's on the inside. And on the outside, Kabbalists say there's only one thing. and they call it nature or creator or the light. Light, let's say. Okay, let's call it light. Let's go with that. Light, nature, creator, it's all the same thing. So we have a reality, which we're going to discover the purpose for it next lesson, which allows us to perceive reality as if it's on the outside, but with everything actually being sensed and felt on the inside, so we can build a correct relationship and discover the acting force behind everything that happens to us, which is the light or the creator. And that's the whole idea. And just one second. And the purpose of studying the wisdom of Kabbalah is actually to build a new sensory organ beyond these 5 senses, with our dot in the heart, with our desire and aspiration to perceive a higher level of reality. We're going to build for ourselves a new vessel of perception, which will be able to decipher all of the actions of the light or the creator or the nature, doesn't matter what. When I say light, you understand what I mean. It's nature, creator, the force that's governing everything. Doesn't matter what you call it. The important thing is that you know there's one force that has created the whole of reality, and it's guiding it towards a purpose. And our job is to discover and relate to him correctly, so we can be with the same frequency as he is, so we can go through this development of attaining a higher level of perception without suffering. So we can develop in a nice way. And that's the whole idea. To get to the level of nature, that high level of perception, high level of consciousness throughout our lives here. And our biggest help is that dot in the heart, which prompts us, urges us, nudges us, pinches us to discover the meaning of life. And then if we do the studying correctly, if we study properly the wisdom of Kabbalah, we can attain a 6th sense. That's the force that acts behind everything. And then we can relate to our life in a very different way than how we're relating it today, with a lot more meaning and understanding, stability, and so on. Right, up to here, do we have any questions?
We've got plenty of questions, and we have about 15 minutes to answer them. So let's just go back from, start with questions that were more on topic, and then we'll go back to ones that pertain to the things that you talked about, about 30 minutes.
I've got one more little thing to finish off, which will take about 5-6 minutes. So you shoot the questions first, but give me 5 minutes or so at the end.
Cool, no problem. So Jimmy from England, first of all, he says, so could it be said that the created reality is so grand that the mirrored reflection is all we could handle as humans?
Well, we can only really receive what we can handle. It's like filling your cup. Your glass will only take as much as the dimension of the glass. You can't fill it anymore. So we have a level of perception that we can only intake with our 5 senses. For example, there are many sound waves that we can't really perceive with our ear. There are many light waves that our eyes can't really perceive. So there are many things and forces in life that we are already aware of as humans that we can't perceive with our 5 senses. We also know that animals perceive reality differently, like bees and dogs. They perceive things differently. They see things, feel things differently. So we understand other ways of perceiving reality. That's for sure. So the Kabbalists are just basically confirming that and saying, yes, there is, and actually that's where we should be at. But that's something we need to develop. Yeah.
Joseph from Freetown is saying, so reality is actually a creation of the mind, and things that we see are just our imagination? What about trees and the earth and everything?
Exactly. Kabbalists call it a dream. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Because when somebody slaps you in life, you can hardly call that a dream. So imagine all the obstacles and hardships we go through life. It definitely doesn't feel like a dream. Sometimes feels like a nightmare. However, this is what they're saying. But one rule in Kabbalah: don't believe it until you attain it. Okay, otherwise you'll turn religious on me, and that's not good. What we need to do is, by studying what they're writing, we need to come to that level of perception and see that the real truth is not what I see, but it's beyond what I see. What does that mean? It means that the truth is actually the force that governs everything which I see. So the things I see in this world are just a speck of what the true reality is. This is why they call this world an imaginary world. Hard to believe because we don't feel like it when we get pinched in life, but we'll get there.
Yeah, this topic is always so interesting. I see questions are flooding in, and it's just prompting a lot of wait a second, I'm questioning everything that I've known, everything that I've felt my entire life. All of a sudden, you're telling me that it's not this way. Yeah. And one thing, it's you kind of feel that it makes sense, and of course science even tells us that there's just the pineal gland and all these things that's happening, everything in the back of the brain, and you disconnect the arm but you still feel it, and all these weird things that we don't understand, and here Kabbalists are telling us thousands of years already that it's this way. So it makes us ask questions like Carmen Pop from Romania says, new stars are discovered. They're revealed only because it comes to someone's mind, or that star burn out there is light years in distance?
Everything we discover in reality is already there in reality. Like those sound waves that I said before that we can't really perceive. Those sound waves are there, but our ear's frequency, they can't really grasp it. Everything we discover in this world with respect to our five senses are because we built gadgets for it. In order for us to see all the germs, we had to, we discovered microscopes. So we can put things under a microscope and say, oh, there are germs in there. We shouldn't eat this and we shouldn't eat this, we shouldn't drink this. Imagine if people saw those a few hundred years ago, what they were eating and drinking with all those germs and all those illnesses, sicknesses, or whatever. Basically, what we've done to develop ourselves in this world is to extend our five senses to discover more depth in corporeality, but it hasn't helped us to discover what's the force behind it. So discovering more things in reality that we didn't see before, it was already in reality, but we just made a bigger telescope, the Hubble telescope, or whichever telescope they discovered it with. They looked, and now they discovered something that was already there. In spirituality, what we really need to discover is the force that created it in the first place. We want to come to understand the thought of the Creator. And this is why the wisdom of Kabbalah is so special. It's the only wisdom where you can actually want to and come to the attainment of the thought of creation.
Right, so we make all these instruments so we can see farther, and make instruments so we can see deeper, but really it's just making us more confused. We realize that we have more questions. It's like reality operates completely differently. When you look out farther in the distance and look and you maximize everything you can till even past the atoms, and you see that it doesn't even behave the same way that we see with our eyes. Like, we can't grasp what's happening on such a level, and it's opening up more questions and making things even more unclear. But here we have Kabbalah. It's explaining to us. It's very simple. That there's light that's happening on the outside of us, and we just perceive that light. So Luis from UK is asking, so what else can we call this? Prana or ki or chi? Can we also name light this way? What do we say in Kabbalah?
Let's just call it nature. All right, because Kabbalists are very pragmatic people. They look at life and they say, well, this is nature, and I didn't create nature. Nature is somehow created. And I didn't create myself as well. And since I live in nature, this force which we're included inside, that we feel that we're included inside of it, is acting on us with laws of nature. So they said, okay, let's call this nature. Let's not confuse ourselves. So they're very pragmatic guys, straight to the point, which is good for us because it's easily understood. So we don't have to come up with new definitions. Let's call this force nature or the creator.
And if you want to go back another diagram, just so it makes it more clear to you and to the other students what we were talking about before, maybe one more, I believe. Did you have one more before that with worlds and stuff? I think it was the first one, maybe. Was it worlds? Yeah, maybe this one.
What's the question?
They were saying, well, you talked about, it was from a text that we read about how the worlds, all of the worlds were created for man. Oh. So they're saying, what worlds are they talking about? What are these upper and lower worlds?
You'll have to wait for the next lesson. The upper worlds are going to be included in the purpose of creation. So the third lesson about how the Creator created reality and what it means to create worlds and what worlds actually mean. It's a very deep topic. In fact, it's 6 volumes called The Study of the 10 Sefirot. But we will touch on that next lesson. So don't miss the next lesson. It's really interesting. Purpose of creation, where we are in reality, what it means to be surrounded by worlds, what it means to go up into another world. So we're all going to study that. It's a really juicy topic. This perception of reality is just to get our toes into the water a little bit so we can, see if the water is nice. But I'm sure after this lesson you'll be all dying to jump into the pool, I guess.
So Luis is saying, can we also call those chakras the worlds?
No, chakras are not the worlds. The worlds are a very special place, specifically built for us.
So you mentioned earlier about athletes and their if they want to get something done, they focus on a single goal and they give everything. Are you going to teach us how to focus everything onto a single goal?
Absolutely, that's the whole idea of the wisdom of Kabbalah. Remember, our nature is to want to be fulfilled. So what could be the purpose of life if our nature is to be fulfilled? It's to be fulfilled. The purpose of life, guys, is to be happy, actually. To be really happy. But in life, unfortunately, we don't know how to be happy. And because we don't know how to be happy, we run around after many things, after a lot of things, which are mostly silly, childish things. And then we end up with zero fulfillment until we hit the grave, I guess. So we're going to learn how to make sound decisions when we're studying the human nature. Once you get to discover human nature more, you'll begin to be more picky about things, which will save you a lot of time and obviously a lot of grief.
So Joseph from Freetown says they're having a power outage, and it looks like he was talking to some friends that were also experiencing similar things. So
where's that? Where are they from?
And from Freetown.
Oh, right.
Right. So I hope everything's everything's fine. Maybe that's something that's semi-normal down there. But if you do happen to be cut off right now, we'll go ahead and ask your question because it's good. You asked this actually a while ago, and you said, "Is there a difference between desire and want?"
No, desire and want are the same thing. I want, I desire, they're the same thing. We just need to understand that our nature is a desire to receive pleasure. Just define it like that. And you'll discover it in our daily lives as well. Don't we run around all day looking for pleasures, from what to eat in our lunch break to, to our morning coffee. Everything is just chasing desires.
Right. This topic, it just opens up. You maybe don't know what Kabbalah is, and you heard and you watched some videos, but once you really start delving into what perception of reality is, which basically explains your entire reality, it explains your life up until this point, helps you understand a little bit more about what happened in your life previously, how to approach life, how to relate to life a little bit differently, and that's basically why you're all here anyways. You want to understand how to relate to life in a more realistic way, in a true way. So it takes a little bit of readjusting, kind of relearning everything you've learned up until now, and it's okay. So we're definitely encouraging you to ask as many questions. We'll sort everything out, and really what we say here, there's none as wise as the experience, which means the more that you study with us, the more that you check into yourself and discover your nature and learn about yourself, the more you really just learn about reality, and you understand that it's not as complicated as you think it is. It's just simply working on yourself, and the more that you work on yourself, the more you'll discover about the reality. So the last question here we'll take with Dora. She says from the USA, she's saying, so does this mean that we're the only intelligent beings in the universe?
I'd say we're quite dumb, actually, given the crises that we're going through every year. Right? As humanity, if you look at animals who live in the forest, they're really happy. They're quite balanced. They have a happy life.
I envy them.
Very peaceful. I do myself. Okay, if you look at animals in their natural habitat, they're much more happy than us. I mean, they don't take Prozac. They don't take drugs to get them out of the loop. They don't feel like depressed. They don't feel like killing each other. They don't feel like, I don't know, they don't feel like killing themselves. But we, humanity, on the one hand are intelligent, on the other hand we are so stupid that it is really testing the depths of the ocean. So from these two opposite ends, though, this is very important. On the one hand we're intelligent, on the other hand the depth of our stupidity is beyond imagination. It needs to be that way because we need to reconcile reality from two extreme opposite ends. In life there is night and day, plus and minus, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, sweet, bitter. Everything in life has a contradictory part. And in our nature, we also have this contradictory situation. This contradiction needs to exist. The thing that makes us different from animals is because we have the ability to measure time. And we have the ability, because we have the ability of the ego, we have the ability to question life, which animals don't have. We have a growing ego, which brings us to despair, which brings us to lack of fulfillment, which allows us to question our lives, whereas an animal doesn't. So although our nature is, on the one hand, yes, a little bit more intelligent than an animal, on the other hand, though, the way we live our lives, definitely not as happy as an animal. We will learn how to reconcile and resolve that issue. Now, if you have questions, please save them for the next lesson. We will answer them, don't you worry. We're going to read one little part, which I'd love to do because one of our friends asked about the worlds. Although we're going to do it next lesson, definitely join in. But I'm just going to give you a little taste from the Kabbalah for the Student book, Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah on page 570, item 13. The thing is that as corporeal objects are separated from one another by remoteness of location, spirituals are separated from each other by the disparity of form between them. This can be found in our world too. For example, when two people share similar views, they like each other, and the remoteness of location does not cause them to draw far from one another. Conversely, when their views are far, they are hateful of each other, and proximity of location will not bring them any closer. Thus, the disparity of form in their views removes from each other, and the proximity of form in their views brings them closer to each other. If, for example, one's nature is the complete opposite of another's, they are as far from one another as the east from the west. Similarly, all matters of nearness and remoteness, coupling and unity that unfold in spirituality are but measures of disparity of form. They depart from one another according to their measure of disparity of form and become attached to one another according to their measure of equivalence of form. Yet you should understand that although the will to receive is a mandatory law in the creature, as it is the essence of the creature and the proper kli, the vessel, for the reception of the goal of the thought of creation, it nonetheless completely separates it from the emanator. This is so because there is disparity of form to the point of oppositeness between itself and the emanator. This is because the emanator is complete bestowal without a shred of reception, and the creature is complete reception without a shred of bestowal. Thus, there is no greater oppositeness of form than that. It therefore follows that this oppositeness of form necessarily separates it from the emanator. Now, this is just a touch of what we're going to touch on next lesson. We're going to go in a bit deeper, a bit more deeper, and put our ankles into the pool, and we'll get into the swimming end later on. Now then, next lesson, purpose of creation, next Tuesday. Any questions, any dramas, please write to us. We'll try to fix it as best we can. Last week the lesson was 1.5 hours, but I have been told I need to limit it to 60 minutes. Although I'd love to be with you guys more, we'll end our lesson here and wish you guys a great week and all the best. See you next Tuesday. There you go, Chris. Get closer.
Thanks, Shmuel. Take us out, man.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, see ya.
Okay, Shmuel, it's over. Lesson's over. Thank you.
Maybe it's a sign.
Bye-bye now.
Okay.